Welcome back. So we will start. Is there anyone there? So I will wait just 20 seconds. I think we're good. Yeah. Okay. So welcome back. I just wanted first to introduce myself, properly. So after Paulo have done it in an incredible way. I seriously thought I was going to be invisible, but now I have to explain a bunch of stuff. But I'm here also to ask some of the questions that you can have about Made of Lisboa. I will be super willing to share that with you. So basically, welcome again to Lisbon. I know that this is not the first meeting that the consortium has had since the beginning of the project, but I'm sure it's going to be the best. At least in the best city from my experience. It's based on a personal experience. But I hope you are enjoying and that you can enjoy until tomorrow in the end of the day. At the beginning, it was explained to you that we're going to have these talks and these discussions today and tomorrow in the morning, and then tomorrow in the afternoon you will do kind of a safari through 3 spaces and 3 spots in Lisbon. So I am going to show you the video of Made of Lisboa really briefly. It's a video of the process we did for the project. It's like about 4 minutes, and then after that I will invite you to ask questions to Marika and to Paulo. They did 2 really good presentations, and I think we have a lot in mind and a lot of questions to make them. Like, I hope you don't feel shy into bringing into generating a discussion after this video.
Lisbon is the next Berlin. New Amsterdam?
Come on.
Lisbon is the new Silicon Valley.
Stop the madness.
Well, what a rough start. Mess with Lisbon's entrepreneurial ecosystem, and that's what happens. They stand up for it, unite, swear a lot, and make things clear. They want to feel authentic. Lisbon is the new Lisbon. Sounds better, but what does that actually mean? We went out to find out, to define Lisboa, to problem solve it. We talked with the local startup crowd, born or made in Lisbon, co-workers, with Miguel, who runs one of the first incubators in town, and also with investors, creatives, makers, and students. We even talked with journalists and with Pedro, who's now in London. Boo! All in all, we did more than 60 interviews. We took part in 5 different events. Break. Okay, let's make a tour. We're going up and down and up and down. That way, here, there, and here too. What a ride. Moving forward, we checked out other startup cities around the world. Barcelona, Tel Aviv, many others. And Lisbon. Ouch. Like human-centered design freaks do, we designed user personas. Like the knower, the wise knowing geek, to the pusher, the one who likes to push. We've set up multidisciplinary teams for some super design sprints with super results. And we did a lot of framing and reframing, thinking and rethinking, mapping and mind mapping to better understand how the ecosystem works. From the qualitative to the quantitative. How? We asked the community to pitch Lisbon to us online. We gave them the possibility to invest. Finally, we asked them to pick up the tools they needed the most. And Pumba! Organize, connect, attract, and inform the community in the digital space in a digital platform. We got the hooks, now we need the looks. Okay, so no matter how much we asked people to pick one emoji, pick a color, or to draw their vision of this new Lisbon, they would always end up showing us how the beauty of their designs, the vision of their business, the residents of their spaces, the things makers made, the code behind coders, the drive of those going up and down startups. All of this was made of the influence of the city itself, of how it shapes us and how we shape it back, of how this incredible Lisboa is not just a random place to work like hell, but to work and live fully, gracefully, like people should. We created this together. We designed a brand like Lisbon. We produced a future space made of Lisboa.
Marika and Paulo, questions for them about the projects. Go.
Okay, one of the key performance indicators for any local ecosystem is its capacity for bringing investors, for being more interesting than others. Could you explain in very few words, in your opinion, what makes you different in this way?
Different from other.
For being attractive for investors, business angels, seed capital, venture capital from abroad.
Yeah. So first of all, we have our local community of investors. So business angels, VCs, local. So one step to attract foreign investors is to make you visible, because otherwise they will not even know that you exist as a community of startups. So the first thing that Lisbon was able to do in a very distinctive way is to position the city as a startup city, as a place where new startups, new businesses are just growing and are really interesting for investors that should come to the city of Lisbon. And one of the things that is really important is to build these bridges between the community of startups and incubators and accelerating programs and those international investors. And the city, not the city council of course, but the city in Lisbon, were able to do this in different ways. So when you need small amounts of investment, you don't need foreign investors, of course. But then, when you have this need of going through additional amounts of investment, you need to connect with international investors. And what we have done in Lisbon was create the conditions so that incubators and accelerating programs were able to bring and to connect with international investors. And this was started like 6 years ago. So when you go to Startup Lisboa, there is no one startup inside the Startup Lisboa that has a lack of investment. If the project is good, there is no lack of investment. And this is only possible because we, Lisbon, we have now a brand for startups. So an international investor, a big VC, when hear about Lisbon, they know there are specific stakeholders that can make a pre-evaluation of the quality of the startups that are emerging in Lisbon, and they should come to the city to at least look at that startup. So this was completely, didn't exist a couple of years ago. Now Lisbon is on the roads, is on the tour of international investors. The second thing was, it's really important to have events where you can bring international investors. And we have a couple of ones. So one of the most interesting is the Lisbon Investment Summit. It happens every year, and it's promoted by one of the biggest accelerating programs and entities that support entrepreneurship in Lisbon. They call Beta I. They also do the Lisbon Channel, which is one of the international accelerating programs. And these accelerating programs and these international events, like for example, next week in Amsterdam, there will be the Amsterdam Capital Week. So some of the most important investors around the world will be in Amsterdam. So there is no other way, at least for startups, to bring investors and the attention of investors than to bring a brand, to make yourself credible as an ecosystem, as a community in which new startups with a high level of growth and capability of becoming global are just emerging and popping up in the city or in the country. In this case, we are talking about Lisbon, and to bring them to evaluate. The other thing is to take the next level and make this clearly more global. And here Web Summit makes a difference. So I'm not sure if you are aware what it is, Web Summit. Web Summit is something that brings all the global community of founders, investors, VC, business angels, top managers, B Corps in one place. And this place is Lisbon. When they came last year for the first time, the city as a place became a different thing. And it was really interesting because we entered for the first time in the biggest report on entrepreneurial ecosystems last year with the Startup Genome Report. And it was clear, and it's really a good study of all the entrepreneurial ecosystems around the world. And the result was we are very small, we are in a very early stage, and we know that. We don't have like startups in rounds A, B, or C in quantity. We don't have big exits, so no big startups selling themselves above 100 million euros. But on the other side, we were one of the more globally connected ecosystem around the world. So we were able to be globally connected like some of the biggest entrepreneurial ecosystems. And one of the results of these was that our founders and our startups are globally, they travel around the world and they have global connections internationally, from San Francisco to New York to Seattle in Europe. And most of the VCs and other founders already came to the city of Lisbon. This is one of the most powerful ways of getting investment, good investment and good investors. And this was the way that we have made it, not the city council, but with different kind of stakeholders. And now we need to take this to the next level, of course. And this is another story, but and of course then we have other problem, which is the scaling of the startups. How can we scale the startups? When we are very young, this is a big challenge because we have a lot of early stage and early investment, early startups, really young. But then the next stage is something that we need to improve and to have more scale-ups.
Just a brief answer. Well, I think that the community role is very important in the innovative ecosystem because you can share your relationship and attract from abroad, for the linkages all over your partner. I mean, you don't need maybe attract financial capitals, but you need to attract other business. You need to bring in your territory a different kind of business if you want to be capable to growing up. So I think so. You can start with a startup, but you need linkages to growing up. You need someone to relate it with. And if you are not in your territory, you need to search outside. Outside, if you are too small, you can nobody talk to you. But if you are in a system, it's more easy, I think.
Cool. I think my question adds to the both answers, which and relate with your initial question, which is like you talk about the example of Startup Lisboa at the beginning, like that there was no startup that had no funding, but that was the beginning 6 years ago. And then you give several examples of a lot of interesting stuff and events that are actually attracting attention to the city of Lisbon. And Marika, you told about bringing new businesses. to the city so that it attracts, so that it gains more, awareness from, from the outside and from potential investors. But which conditions do you establish, one, to bring corporate companies or companies so that after that you will attract investment? And which conditions, was it soft power, any activities like specially designed to connect those early initial entrepreneurs and startups living in Startup Lisboa? How did you establish those initial connections? Which conditions did you have? Was it like government soft power, which had a lot of connections in the outside? Was any specific person? Was any specific activity?
So the first part of your, the first question, it's really important for us. And well, I think that one of the things that we were able to do in Lisbon, and it's the first, I think one of the first slides that I've shown with the 4 engines. I think one of the most powerful things is the capability that we had until today to design a strategy that somehow has this kind of a holistic approach. So let me give you 2 examples. All the conversation that we are having now, it's around entrepreneurship. So how can we foster entrepreneurship? How can we stimulate new business, new startups, creating new incubators, co-working spaces, different kind of accelerating programs, creative industries around this. So, and this in the end is the capability of having in the city the possibility or getting the best conditions so that new businesses, new projects can grow from the scratch in the city of Lisbon. And these founders can be Portuguese, from Lisbon, or from abroad. We are just attracting a huge amount of people. They are creating new projects, their own startups in Lisbon. They are not from Portugal. They are starting new business in Lisbon. So this we can say that is organic growth, something that is growing from our territory. And all the things that we are talking about, new events, the community, meetups, and all the things, this sense of community, this sense of the vibrant city around startups and entrepreneurship is really important so that we can have the conditions and also the brands and this symbolic capital that you can grow something out of nothing in Lisbon. The other part, which is so important as this one, is the capability of having a really ambitious and aggressive strategy for attracting new things that already exists. And this can be big companies, multinational companies, strategic projects, research or competence centers from companies that already are in Lisbon that they want to grow.
But what are the conditions to attract them?
Yes, the conditions usually, the usual suspects are fiscal incentives. I'm going to say to you the hardcore. Fiscal incentives, human capital, the pool of talents, usually for the ones that we want is like more engineering or computer science or electrotechnical engineering, marketing, digital, this kind of things, but also design. But usually when a big company wants to come to a city like Lisbon and they are in competition with others, like Berlin or Amsterdam or Florence or whatever. This is the usual things that they say. We want space at a competitive cost. We want talent and people at a competitive cost. There are any fiscal incentives? Great. And more or less, now, this is great, but we are trying to work above and not just with these kind of attractiveness in the city of Lisbon. I'm going to give you an example. Lisbon is becoming really attractive also for multinational companies. For example, Daimler just opened the digital hub, the marketing and commercial digital hub of the entire Mercedes-Benz group in Lisbon in 2 months ago. Why they opened these? Because of this. And I don't think we have any fiscal competitiveness when compared with other cities. But we have something, we have this capability of presenting ourselves as a place vibrant for big companies, small companies, startups, young students, researchers, and present this with numbers to these kind of companies and these kind of stakeholders. And just one example, they made the first call for people for this digital hub was for Portuguese people. They have like opening like 150 jobs. They made for the Portuguese people only, and they get like 400 applications from engineering, different kind of engineering areas. And then they made another part, a second open call, not just for Portuguese, but for the world. And they have made like a video of people working in Lisbon with all the amazing things that we have, the river, the sea, the beach, the monuments. And they get in just 2 weeks, they get like 200 applications. What that means for us is that we are not just attractive because of the usual things that cities and countries can offer. We are also attractive because we as a city are an amazing place for the people not just to come here as a tourist, but come here to open a new company, to open a new startup, or to even come to work or to study. This holistic thing is really important, and it's not easy. Well, and I know there are people from cities and municipalities. It's very difficult to make this because the pressure of the day, of the daily basis activities of any city is so strong that sometimes it's difficult to put all these balls in the air at the same time. Oh, sorry.
Just little things. I don't think the usual incentives are very strong in this case, like fiscal incentives and so on. I agree with Paolo when he said that the human capital and the possibility to find someone, even in the institution, which you can talk about your idea to doing business in Florence. Even in Florence we have beautiful cities, beautiful weather and so on, but you need to convince the business outside that you are a very unique place for the competencies, for the capabilities to building a system of services, of capabilities, of tools to assist their business. So I think in Florence in the last few years there is a lot of changes in not just in the mobility, but even in the system thinking in the institution. And I think this is a good starting point to change our mentalities in respect of the big firms outside Florence.
Hello, I've got a question. My name is Michał Misztal. I represent the city of Warsaw, but actually I'm from business incubators. And what you said is very important because of this, as you said, holistic vision. And 12 years ago, we created the same strategy according to the way that we would like to create Poland, the most entrepreneurial country in the world. And you said that you are focused mostly on this early stage, and this early stage is quite well developed. And you also mentioned about the problems with creating the bigger scale for startups. Have you considered another incentives for big companies, international corporations, to organize and accelerating programs to support the development of the startups? Because they can very rapidly create the distribution of the products. Maybe you have this kind of
I totally
programs.
agree. It's not that we don't have that. We have major companies creating accelerating programs here, from Portuguese big companies like utility companies or ICT or communication companies, and in fact we have some partnerships, the city council, with some big companies in accelerating programs. So most of the Portuguese and international companies, they have inside corporate accelerators and also open accelerating programs. It's not that we don't have that. It's that on the other part, so on the community of the ecosystem, and because we are in a very early stage, we are in a very young stage as an ecosystem. Most of the startups that are growing in Lisbon, they are not big enough now to make big exits, and this is the part because it's a question of time. I believe we are doing everything that we can. I think everything is going really well, but we are in a very early stage. So we started a few years ago, and some of the most important startups that are growing globally, like Uniplaces or Feedzai or Unbabel, they just grow from a very early stage, like 3 years ago, and they are growing fast, but they are not big companies yet. They didn't get any exits yet, and this is part of the natural evolution. I was not complaining. I was just making this statement so that you can see that in Lisbon we are really in an early stage. But there is something in Lisbon that I believe is distinctive from other cities or other parts of the world, which is we have these brands, we have this attractiveness, and this is like a new narrative. There is a story behind Lisbon. It's not, you know, that Madonna is coming to Lisbon, but it's not just stars and musicians. It's like all the startups and talents and founders and investors. They want to come to Lisbon, and this is something. It's like a new storyline, a new narrative for a city that should go forward and get the best out of this window of opportunity. You know, so we need to work really hard and fast so that we can just get out of the best of this window, because there will be other cities that will be competing with Lisbon in the future also.
I will just try to shift towards the topic of the conversation, which is about mapping ecosystems. So I'll ask Marika, for example, what was your choice when you decided to leave the council, or to go to a much broader space while mapping your ecosystem? Like, which were the basis for that decision?
Well, first of all, we, as I said, we start with the municipality of Florence, but we needed to be larger with the metropolitan area. Is a very new subject in Italy, and in this first scaling up, we show that there are a lot of agents which have linkages outside. So when we have to define the boundaries of our search, we ask ourselves, well, are you sure you don't cut off something important for the metropolitan area, even if it came from outside, or if the agents had relation with the outside or linkage outside? And well, we think it's very important to the idea of the ecosystem to put together as much as we can
So that means you are tracking the evolution of the companies who are born there. So even if they leave, like, you try to track where they are going and the impact that they are.
Not just if they are leaving, but if they are partnership or joint research with other university in Italy or even outside Italy. Even they are different local units. If we talk of SMEs, and so we need to consider this kind of agent and in a proper ecosystem itself. He is not just the headquarter of the SMEs or the startup, but it needed to be representing all this connection. Because I think the value added to stay inside the community is the relational capital that you bring in here.
Questions? More questions? No? So I have few. I have more. Okay. The biggest challenges for you to design these maps, or to track these people, or to track these companies, like the biggest challenges for you, the most difficult thing that you encountered during this process of mapping the ecosystem?
Find it. I find it. I mean, we have not one definition for each agents. We needed to ask ourselves, okay, what is a startups is not one definition. What is as SMEs is not just one definition. And based on which kind of definition you take, you need to move the focus of our mapping. So you have a map continuously growing up, and where you have a lot of data, it's very difficult to put together and to be useful for your policy, because if you have too much information, you don't really can use it for your strategies. You need a conceptual map to understand which strategies you need to follow to reach your goal.
So even the meaning of the words of, like what's an entrepreneur, what's a startup, what makes a startup, like these type of things that you were exploring and trying to define?
To define, yeah. We use almost the law, because we have regional law and national law. We define that, but not in the same in the same way. So there is an overlap, but not. It's not a very easy task. Italian system, yeah, in Italian way.
I've got another question. Sorry. How did you persuade it? Sorry. How did you persuade the incubators to update information at your website? How did you persuade them to take part in this process?
We have to ask to the municipality. Well, I think
maybe you forced them somehow.
I think that there is a very important question, and you need, in my opinion, you need to make understandable that to be a part of this platform, to be a part of this ecosystem is a value added for you. Well, you.
So what added value?
Value to find a partnership, a value to find a new channel to speak with the authorities. It's a value because you can find different kind of capabilities that you need. Well, even funding. I think all the partners need to consider that in this global space of work you can do alone. And even for the incubators, we are seeing now a lot of incubators that shift their mission. They are most oriented now in rent an office and doing office services than give to the startup real business services, real new capacity to afford the market. So I think to stimulate this ecosystem is quite important, even for the incubator to stand that, even to map what's going on outside there.
So, sorry, another question.
It's okay.
You mentioned.
This has been transmitted.
You mentioned that some of these incubators have shifted their ideas and changed from incubators to serviced office. And weren't they afraid that if they publish the numbers and the names of the companies that are inside, somebody could take them over?
I don't think this is a problem. I really don't think the publicity is the matter. If you are capable to offer real business services, if you offer real help to new ideas, well, we have a lot of research lab and university in Florence and in Tuscany, so I don't think it's a problem if your startup growing up and go outside. I think you are always able to doing your job.
Of course, from the point of view of incubator is good, but from the point of view of serviced office is not good.
I don't understand why you shift the service office from the incubator.
Because you said that some of these incubators has switched the vision and the benefits that they provide to the companies from being an incubator and from giving services like training sessions, like mentorship, to just basic serviced office.
Well, if you shift into the service approach, I think it's not a problem if you're a startup growing up and go outside, because you don't need to focus on the rent of your room. This is a problem. If your business core is renting your room or giving your secretary, well, this could be a problem. But if you offer services, you don't need to offer just inside, even outside, if they are going outside. And I think is, if you are competitive, I don't think this is the matter for the incubators.
When you say shift, it was more an evolution, an add-on to
Yeah.
the services that they were providing
Yeah.
at an initial stage.
I'm Julie from the city of Antwerp, Belgium. For the ecosystem mapping, for the policy, it's important, for example, to know how much employment the startups create. So it's not easy to have, they are really young startups, so it's not easy to track them. For example, to know which investment round they are. Are these facts and figures you also include in your mapping?
So, yes. So this is a really good question. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, I'm not going back to the definition, but it's really a key question, because what it is a startup. Basically, a startup is a company that is growing, is in a very early stage, scale fast, and can be global. We in Made of Lisboa, one of the key issues of our project from the beginning was where to put the frontier. So what are the criteria so that we say that this company or this project don't belong to this ecosystem? We open a little bit the criteria and the frontier, so we don't have only startups. And this is an ongoing discussion. And we just excluded some sectors or industries or specific activities that we think they are not part of these for different reasons. The other part is, how can we quantify an ecosystem, an entrepreneurial ecosystem? And this is really difficult, really difficult. So, and in particular, for you to quantify, you need to clearly define what are you looking at. So, for example, in Startup Genome, it's only for tech startups, and it's much more easier for them to quantify. And they have just quantified our ecosystem. Its values, it worth like 1.3 billion dollars, 1.3 billion dollars. And they have made like a huge amount of surveys and some questionnaires and interviews using big data, but only for tech. And that is possible. If you go to the Startup Genome report, you can go there and you have a lot of measures, a lot of statistics about the Lisbon ecosystem, but just for tech startups. In Made of Lisboa, clearly we have a more open community of people and startups and companies. And how did we try to somehow have a sense of the value of this ecosystem? We have made two things. One is, because we are working with all these incubators, accelerating programs, co-working spaces, this different kind, we don't have only a picture, a slide. When we show the slide, we have links and the sense of belonging to the ecosystem of all those stakeholders. And that's priceless, you know? And it's very difficult to get it. It takes time, and it takes a lot of projects, joint projects. Just to give you an example, every year we have the Entrepreneurial Week of Lisbon. From 2012, in 1 week, we invite all the stakeholders, all the incubators, accelerators, to make something during that week. In the last one, we have like 40 or more events involving all the different kind of entities and stakeholders, because they are part of, and we just make a call or just an email, and they just respond, and we organize throughout the city, like 40 events around the city. For the quantification, we have made two things. One was, we asked all the incubators and accelerating programs the numbers that they have in the incubators, the number of startups, the people employed, jobs. And we have made two things. One was, in that specific time, it was on August last year, September last year, we just make all this survey, real difficult to make surveys to incubators, accelerators, to get startups answering. We get that, and we had this kind of numbers. So it was in 2016, the number of startups in incubators was 475. And then we made another question. In the past 3 years, what were the numbers, not only of the startups that were at that current date on the incubator, but the alumni? And all the jobs that were created, even the startup is not in the incubator, and it was. What were the numbers? And so we had like 1,348 startups, and also for the jobs. So this is the way that we are approaching. But we don't have here all the startups and jobs created outside of these spots, and we go for another kind of quantification. And the platform gives you. And this is what, just to finish, what I'm going to show you. The platform, let me see if I can get it. It gives you, well, the platform has more things, so that you can explore the platform. But the platform has this thing, which is analytics. And it has these numbers that I was just mentioning, numbers that we need to go for and build and quantify. And then it has the numbers of the platform itself, So these are the numbers that come automatically from the platform. It's a really challenge to quantify something that is so dynamic, so fluid, and it changes so much. And this is the way that we are trying to get the quantification. And we are working also, we're trying to work more closely with some of those companies that have access to the number of companies created. We have several ones. Difficult task and challenge.
Marika, you want to add?
I'm sorry, a question. Which is the difference between registered companies and users?
This is
user, who is that?
Users, it's the total number between companies and people and investors and
if I'm an individual.
It's an entity. Like the users are each entity as a person or as a
person,
as an organization.
No. If you are a person, you have specific rules. If you are a person, you need to be part of. You need to have a company.
Okay.
Registered, or you need to work on one specific spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And there is some rules. You need to be registered the company must be registered in Lisbon.
You don't imagine how difficult it was to take that decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to add
just one
to
thing.
this question?
You can have access. You can have access to the entire platform, but this discussion was for you to be registered, so that you can have your own profile.
Okay. Do you want to add to this specific question? Otherwise, I will ask someone else to make one last question before we do a small, simple exercise. Another question.
As a city, when do you decide to do it yourself, and when do you decide to do it in partnership with your partners? For example, Startup Lisboa or the space for 4,000 square meters you are talking about. That's a bit my question.
So two completely different projects, So the Startup Lisboa was born in 2000. Well, the incubator. I think that Margarida can explain you better than me, because he was at that time one of the person that presented the idea with Invest Lisboa. Maybe you can just explain a little bit more what the history of the creation of Startup Lisboa, for example.
Hello. Well, Startup Lisboa is a participatory budget project from 2010. And then we want to do something different, that the incubators that already exist in Lisbon. All the incubators are in the universities or in the technological pole, like here Lispolis or something. Then the people that vote in that proposal want a different situation, a place when they can go and when they need and they want. So, Startup Lisboa, it begins with a partnership between City Council, a financial entity, and a public institute. We need a financial institute because it's expensive to do an incubator and we invite all the financial entities, all banks that are here in Lisbon. Just only one answer, and then it will come our partner. So we built the Startup Lisboa with these main three partners: City Council, a bank, and a public entity who manage the entrepreneurship national level. And then we working with another entities to support, to think some programs that help and support entrepreneurs. The other project that is Hub Creativo do Beato, it's 40 or 30,000 square meter thing. It's an old factory. An old
military maintenance infrastructure.
Yes. That the space passed to City Council, and the whole project is associated to an objective, and this objective is to rehabilitate that area too in Lisbon. It's an area that is more not rehabilitated, and then in City Council want two things with that project: want to rehabilitate the area and want to help entrepreneurs and to attract more investments to the city and to that area. I think that this is two different projects. The dimension of the projects are different. The objectives of the projects are different. Although the Startup Lisboa, in the beginning, is in the downtown, because the former mayor want to rehabilitate that area too, because our downtown now it's lovely and okay, but about 6 or 7 years in the night is nobody, because there's no dynamic. Now it's okay. I don't know if you have more questions.
Thank you, Margarida. So, what time is it? I think we are really close to lunchtime. It's already, we've passed. So I will ask you just for a little, really small exercise. We thought about doing it on Post-its, but the logistics will take us more time. So I'll ask you all to open your mobile phones or tablets and to write an email, to open the email box, because you're going to send an email to us. Can I ask you to do that? Send an email. Can you take your phones now, open the email, and send us an email? I'm going to ask you to write a few stuff on your phones and on your tablets. Let's do it.
Consegues escrever aí dalia.pinheiro@cm-lisboa.pt para eles verem, porque o mail é muito complexo.
Okay, so get ready. You're hungry, like I am, and this will demand a little, 5 minutes of our attention before we go to lunch. And the first thing that it's difficult is to write this email. It's Dalia. It's D-A. Paulo is going to share it for you to know where to send that email. So it's Dalia, D-A-L-I-A. Wait, are you writing vertically?
I'm a really strange guy.
It's Dalia. What are you doing?
It's my head.
So Dalia.Pinheiro. Yeah. So P-I-N-H-E-I-R-O. Oh.
No, I'm trying to find the.
Wait. So it's Dalia.Pinheiro, P-I-N-H-E-I-R-O at.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to find it. Okay.
At CM.
No.
Oh. I didn't thought it was so difficult. Like. Yeah, we'll make it bigger. Yeah. Podes pôr bocadinho mais.
Sim. Primeiro deixa-me só escrever que este computador tem. Acho que está com.
The computer is really slow. So it will take us around 20 seconds to make that email bigger. Okay, so here we have it. Okay, so okay, so it's dalia.pinheiro at cm_lisboa.pt. So I'm going to ask you to write the email first, and then I'll explain the exercise. It's something really simple. We just want to make a beautiful, graphic afterwards with it. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to write the from 5 to 8 stakeholders that you would introduce in a platform like this. So if you had to choose the stakeholders, the main stakeholders, which one would you introduce, would you put inside of one of these platforms that they presented? Would you put people? Would you put companies? Would you put investors? Would you put universities? Would you put the R&D centers? Would you just put everything, or would you choose? Would you be able to choose? The second thing, so you can just list, list of 5 to 8, and then I would ask you to rate the order of importance. So you can write, for example, I'm gonna have startups, and then in front of startups, you have to write a number from 0 to 5. So the importance for me to have the startups in this platform is 5. The importance for me to have the universities in this platform. So you're just attributing value to each one of these stakeholders. Did Eddie, was it okay? Yeah? Clear? Good. Yeah, you just write the name of the stakeholder, and in front of the name of the stakeholder, you just have to rate them from 0 to 5 if you think it's super important to have it on a platform like this, or it's not so important.
You're talking about the type of the stakeholder, not the name of the stakeholder.
The type of the stakeholder, yeah. Dalia, get ready, you will get a lot of emails. We have a lot of work to do afterwards. I will help. If you can justify that, it will be interesting. I would say that probably it's a feature, but you can put it there. Decision-making process. Yeah, that's it. So that we can try to understand, like, if we get some interesting and new, if we get a different stakeholder than the ones that we have, and to see also if we together would make the same decisions, or if we have different opinions about the topic. Are we good? 1 minute more? Yeah? Okay, so in the afternoon, the topic will be open source for entrepreneurial knowledge, okay? And we will be back here at 2:30. and the lunch will be served right over here. So, in that entrance area. For the ones who are in Lisbon for the first time, I suppose not many of you, you know where the river is, so there will be some time to explore the river and to go to Terreiro do Passo, which is really close from here.
Not inside the river.
Not sudden, yeah. Try to avoid, going inside the river. I think it's actually forbidden, but
No,
it's allowed now. I wouldn't go, but it's your choice.
It's allowed to swim inside.
So we will be back at
it's too
2:30, and the lunch will
But you
be
can go
right,
through and
behind that
get
wall
into
over
the
there,
water.
on the way out. So
And you
please send that email
think that we
to
have
Dahlia.
is
You can
like
write whatever you want on the
that
subject,
sense.
Like a promenade.
and,
Yes, you like the stairs. You can go
and
there.
I'll see you back at 2:30. Or no subject. It's okay. What? Yeah. You can leave. You can leave your stuff here. Okay. So see you in about 2 hours at 2:30 here. Thank you for this morning. Thank you, Paulo. Thank you, Marika.
Thank you.
2 great presentations. It was a good way to start. Thank you.
Did you send